So for all of you that do not know me, here is our introduction slide. Yadida bladibla. And so who remembers E2EVC Amsterdam? Okay. So if you were there, you probably remember this hotel and the location. You may remember this in Amsterdam. Maybe with this crowd it may have looked more like this. If you did this in Amsterdam, you may not remember anything at all. However, if you've done it right, you should remember this, which was the first Cloudhouse presentation we did at E2EVC. Okay. So a little bit of a repeat, but what we told there, which we're not going to repeat today, is essentially what we do in Cloudhouse. So we do application virtualization. So we create a nice container of your application. And the secret sauce that we add is this middle layer where we apply this application compatibility sauce, and we make your application run on any modern operating system. We go in lots and lots more details. The good observer has seen that we've added a lot of new stuff. So what we see more and more often is applications that worked initially on Windows 10 and are breaking between Windows 10 updates. Because a Windows 10 update isn't really an update, it's just a new installation of Windows and your settings are copied over, right? So what things we talked about is, what did we talk about? Introduction to Cloudhouse compatibility containers. We talked about the auto packager, we showed you a demo. We talked about our architecture, and I think the takeaways were that we're not using services, we don't have an agent, and we're not using filter drivers. I don't think Jim is in the room, but Jim can talk about filter drivers and why they are evil. The takeaway is we don't have one of those evil filter drivers. We talked about our container format, what it looks like. We did a demo with Skype for Business on kernel object isolation, and we did a demo of Google Earth for XenApp. If you were not in Amsterdam, I think you can still watch the recordings, and we are not going to repeat all of the above. Okay? So what about Athens? Well, obviously Athens is full of old stuff that doesn't work properly, old stuff that is broken. So we did a little tour around the city, and we found a lot of PC shops and No, stand on it. You're taller. Okay. And obviously all of these machines run XP. Yeah? So you can still buy them today here. Not one, not two, not three, many of them. But we talked a lot about how you get away from XP, but I'm a bit disappointed if any of you were still running Windows XP. So what is next after Windows XP? What else can we get rid of for you? So I thought of this picture, which is what is going to be our next Windows XP. So obviously, Server 2003, if you're still running it, you should get away from it. Is anyone still running Server 2003 in this room? Oh, no, not. Okay, one, couple. So you should be getting away from Server 2008. You should be getting away from Server 2008 R2. And obviously, this preparation is well prepared, months in advance, blah, blah, yada. So this morning I was looking for pictures. So I searched for pictures of Server 2003, Server 2008. And what's the other thing you should get away from? It's which version of XenApp?
XenApp 6.5.
So I searched for XenApp 6.5, and this is what I got. So apparently this is a XenApp 6.5 admin training, and I asked some of the German guys, and they actually know this consulting company, and they told us it was a respectable company, even though this picture suggests totally different things.
So but the instructor, right?
Yeah. I guess so, yeah.
You gonna sign up? Why did we never see her E2EVC?
But the takeaway from this picture is that you should get away from PVS 6 and from XenApp 6.5, obviously. Okay, so that's what you need to remember. This is what you need to go away from. And there are some other things which you might have in the enterprise, SQL 2005, SQL 2008. All of this stuff is out of support. Okay? So if you search on the Microsoft site on the end of support for Server 2008 R2, which is actually already in extended support, so this is the end of extended support, so no more security updates.
Unless you move to Azure.
So Microsoft says if you migrate to Azure, you get 3 years of free security updates, and during these 3 years you could hypothetically migrate all of your applications to Server 2019. Okay? The other option is that you update to Server 2016 or newer today in your on-premises data center, and obviously the challenge is your server apps break on Server 2016-2019. Okay? And I think this is a unique thing that Cloudhouse is doing. We can not only virtualize desktop applications, but we can virtualize, containerize, and make compatible your server applications. So this could be your SQL Server database, this could be your Oracle database, this could be your backend. Because usually if you have an older type front-end client application, it has an older backend, right? And potentially it doesn't work with the newer version of SQL. So we saw this nice slide that somebody put on Twitter. So they said, you're already in extended support. The definitive end is January 14, 2020, which you may think is a bit further away, but it's actually very, very close if you need to migrate all these apps away. And there were two paths. One is migrate to Azure. There was no second path. Okay. So I think this is where we come into play. So we can take your server apps. And the nice thing is we package them on the OS that they were intended for. So if your app was written for, say, Server 2003, we can capture your container on Server 2003. We make a container, you pick up the container, and you can run it on Server 2016, Server 2019. You can run it on Azure, or Amazon Workspaces, or any cloud that you like. Okay.
Okay, it's fine now. So most of you don't know me, I'm Priya, and I work for Cloudhouse as a developer.
We all know you.
Okay, you know me, thank you. So I've put in some slides to explain how those things are done, because Remko obviously said we package this, we move it to new platforms. It's hard to believe. Unless you see the code, it's hard to believe. So I'm here to represent what is that part of the code which fixes it, so that, you know, again, you can try the product, you can test it yourself, but this highlights what exactly we can address. So this is, if you see the virtualization spectrum, now you must be aware of different virtualization engines, AppWith, Hinap, all of them are really good at doing these, but they don't fix compatibility issue. Because of that, Cloudhouse kind of companies, we have invented a way to hijack, or not hijack actually, to trap into all those subsystems of Windows where an application can break, possibly break. So if you see this spectrum, you'll find it, we trap into, most of our virtualization engines, they do virtualize file system, registry, kernel objects as well. Like Tim corrected me that day, he said kernel objects are virtualized by AppWith, which is, I didn't know that. So most of these components are to some extent touched by different virtualization engines. But because we claim that we are a compatibility solution, we have to be really good at migrating all of them, at hooking into all of them, virtualizing all of them. Because one single call might actually crash your app, and we guarantee that it will not crash. So our guarantee is based on the fact that our virtualization engine spans through the whole kernel subsystem of Windows, wherein whether you have a file call, a registry call, or a kernel object which is causing some deprecated behavior which is not expected on Windows 10 or Server 2019, then we virtualize those calls and make sure that your application is working on that machine. So if I see, I'll just keep this mic if you're okay with that. Okay. So if I see the application, now there are, again, I had another session with Tim this morning on MSIX. If you see an application, the best way to fix an app is by changing the code. I know I'm a developer, so I know it's best and easiest foolproof way of making your apps work. Just change your code, get rid of the duplicated calls. But most of the times, because of different reasons, people don't have their code, people don't have their installers anymore, people don't have developers who have done that, or don't have money and time. Because of all these factors, people are just bound to those old platforms. Like you said, you are still on Server 2003. You don't want to be there, but there's no other way you can do it. So that's why this virtualization engine, we have built it with the core mindset that all these things should be handled whether we go to a new server operating system or a desktop operating system. Engine works the same. Windows APIs are, as I will say, most of them are same, few of them might have changed. So when we hook into all these components, database components, like Oracle related issues we fix, we have fixed many VB6 related issues, JInitiator problems, old versions of Java, .NET 1, these all the applications which were built at that time, and they were heavily dependent on the COM infrastructure as well. So many COM servers, COM clients, I have my colleagues here, they debug every day. So all these things.
Who here runs applications that use Java? Ah, come on.
he hates Java.
So who has a single version of Java? Who likes Java?
Okay. Very like Java. So yeah, that's the reason, because all these APIs, and especially the way it was programmed back in 1990s, it's not suitable for today's infrastructure. It's not suitable for, and operating system is imposing more and more restrictions. Browsers are imposing more and more restrictions. IE11 has so many more security restrictions. Your app from IE6 or maybe IE5 as well, they can't really flawlessly work here. So what we have done is we have made the virtualization engine so that it runs through whole of the 360 degrees angle of where an application might go wrong, and then we redirect it. We make sure that the application works on the latest platform.
And I think this is key, right? Because up until Windows 7, you could still run IE9 or maybe even IE8. If you go to Windows 10, there is no more IE9. You have only IE11. So if your intranet application only works on IE9, you need to do something, right? Which is usually change the backend. So probably my phrase would be the developer died, but you said he would be on a Greek island enjoying the sun, retiring. I think that we see a lot is that there is incompatible JavaScript code because of the security demands that Microsoft is making now. And the nice thing is that we can change this on the fly. So without changing the IIS or the web server, we can intercept incompatible JavaScript calls. We replace them with the correct JavaScript calls that IE11 understands, and we execute the call. Okay, so the thing we try to do is make it auto magic, and it will just work out of the box.
So with, basically with all the solutions, when your application is having some kind of deprecated behavior, before it hits the operating system, we change it at runtime. So that's how we are imposing our rules, and we are making the application behave correctly on that operating system. So if I get a little more in detail with this thing, now level of complexities an application has based on our experience of what we have seen, the customers we have seen. So if you see basic level of complexities, you need file and registry redaction, which any virtualization engine will do. Basic file and registry, you don't want to install it on the main disk. You want to install it in your container location. Clean uninstall, clean install, these all happen with that. Second level of complexity comes when you have COM objects. When you have kernel objects, like Remko said, we showed Citrix, we will show Citrix Receiver today.
Yeah, we will show that later on.
We showed even other Google Earth working simultaneously. We showed Skype working. So these all heavily depend on the mutexes. So that's where we isolate those mutexes and make sure that your application runs properly. Same thing goes with the third level of complexity, which is network virtualization. Again, JavaScript related stuff which Remko said. Normal services, Windows services are a real pain if you want to virtualize them. And again, database related stuff as well. So based on all these complexities we have seen, we have baked these kind of solutions in the product itself. So now over, you can imagine, 8 years of time, we have built the product based on hundreds and thousands of these applications and made sure that now it's easier for us to just click, 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 and yes, you have a high percentage of applications which will really work out of the box because of the baked in solutions there. So when we look at the further things, saying future of Microsoft application is MSIX, like they have declared. So we joined the wagon with them and we said we will be one of the partners, but only thing is we have been doing it for 8 years. So if you see MSIX, the package support framework which they have come up with, the new edition, that is more or less similar to how we did it since last 8 years. So that's where we see that we add a value on top of PSF. We can generate it in MSIX format, we can use the PSF framework and add a value to that. So this is 2018 when they have released it in March. They are growing. It's based on community effort, it's based on Microsoft internal people and partner vendors. But what we have done 8 years back is a real big product right now. So So MSIX, for everyone it's new, not for us. At least PSF part, package support framework, is not new for us because we have been doing it since long. So that's where we see that we can give an 8 years head start for any business who is trying to migrate to an MSIX and have legacy app problem. So we can readily use this today and solve the problems right now. MSIX will go there at some point of time, but we are there today. So if you see the next slide, these are mainly the questions people have, and people did ask us as well. It's very early stage. Can we really go with MSIX right now? Is it the right time? What's the risk? What's the risk? What kind of skill level will it need? And we don't have any estimate of how long will a product take to convert to MSIX and work properly on the new platforms. So for all these things, we have an answer to that because we have been doing it for many years. So all the critical applications, we have launched it in 2010 and we have zero development effort, no debugging effort at all because the product itself has evolved a lot. So today you don't need debugging or development type of effort. Use the product, it will have all the fixes baked into it. So if we see the next one, saying what exactly is this proposal? So how many of you have seen package support framework from Microsoft or heard about it? Yeah. Yeah, so that's relatively new. Yeah, it's relatively new. What they are doing is with this framework which Microsoft announced, they are saying that if you have some, say for example, your application is accessing some file on C program files, which is not allowed right now, but your XP app or your 2003 app has that problem. So then you have to hook into the function API, which is trying to trigger that create file and change the path. That is possible with PSF framework because they are hooking into all the Windows APIs. And same thing we have been doing for last many years. So you can expect that all these are already baked into our solution. So all these fix-ups which community will come up with, MSIX, Microsoft will come up with, we already have for different things. For app security, many applications, you can just migrate it, but it's not as secure as it should be. Because Windows XP time, hackers were not that advanced. There were some tricks around hacking, but now they are really advanced. So you don't want to bring your old application as it is and deploy it on Windows 10. You are opening up a big hole on your latest platform. You don't want to do that. So we have all these things as part of fix-ups. Security, databases, Visual Basic, old .NET apps, Java apps, COM, DCOM, networking, kernel isolation. All these are baked into the product. And we can inject that in your MSIX or any format, in fact. Not just MSIX, any executable which is on it. Okay, so now he'll explain you what are the nightmares of he deals with every day.
So who has used this tool?
Everyone.
Who likes it?
Well, that's the thing, right? I mean,
I don't like looking through the box.
I think it's a great tool, and I respect the guys from SysInternals, Mark Rusinovich, a lot. And as much as I like this tool, I would so much not use the tool. But this is something, this is part of our life, our jobs. We need to use this tool, right? The cool thing is, there have been a number of presentations on Process Monitor here at E2EVC, to use the more advanced features. One of the things that I particularly like is when I joined Cloudhouse, I walked in the office and I thought I was this smart guy who knows everything and I'm very good at this shit. And I saw my colleague Ollie in the office, and he was using a feature of Process Monitor that I've never seen before. And I was like, I use that all the time, it's great, isn't it? I thought I should figure out how that works. But I think this is the point, you need a lot of expertise to not only fix these application compatibility issues, but especially figure out what's wrong with them, right? So the approach that Priya talked about, that Microsoft is proposing to us, is that you need to develop a DLL in Visual Studio, in C++, and if that doesn't sound difficult enough, you actually need to know what you need to fix, okay? So we need tools like this, and I think with many applications, even Process Monitor will not show us, right? Because Process Monitor will show us registry and file-based access, but if the application is expecting a particular version of the Windows API, and the API has changed over time, this tool is not going to show us, okay? So there are other tools that you can use, obviously Process Explorer, and I'm guessing you're familiar with that one as well. Has anyone used API Monitor before? It's a little bit less hands. So it's an extremely powerful tool, but this requires even more knowledge, so you need to know what APIs are available, which API you should monitor, because if you simply tick all the boxes in the left pane, you will get a log file that's hundreds of megabytes, and where do you even begin searching, right? So you kind of need to be an expert in using all these tools. If you have any questions about it, we have a great guy here that can tell you anything about it.
I don't have any questions.
I could, but it's much more convenient to push it to Audi. But the point is, once you've figured out what's wrong with the application, you need to actually get a copy of Visual Studio. You need to be working on your C++ skills. And then Microsoft thinks that IT pros are going to write a DLL in C++ and then share it on GitHub. So, how many of you are going to write C++ DLLs and then share them on GitHub? I can see the very exciting Tim putting his hand up. And I think he probably will. It probably looks good on your MVP contribution sheet. But the reality is, IT pros are not going to write C++ DLLs. The other problem is that developers, they test stuff on their machine, right? So they compile, they probably have an administrator account because else their debugger doesn't even work. It compiles on their machine and then they just ship it out. Which is basically why Docker was invented, because it works on the developer's machine, and if you have Docker, you can ship the developer's machine. But as enterprise guys, we don't want to roll out Docker for our users and get our applications in Docker, right? So this is an example fix-up that Microsoft put on GitHub. Does anyone in the room understand this code besides Tim? Okay, that is a really good score. I will name you Tim 2. No, I'm just kidding.
You call many things. Tim's good.
But this is just not going to happen. Okay? I mean, the idea of what Microsoft is doing is really cool, because basically, and this is my impression of it, they looked at what Cloudhouse is doing, they've replicated what we're doing in a bad way. Because they've essentially followed the approach, but they missed out the bit where we diagnose what is wrong with your application and apply the fix-up automatically. So we don't ask you to write C++ DLLs with Visual Studio to make your own fix-up, okay? That said, if you think this is cool, eat your heart out, because the power you get with this, and from my security background, I think there are some exciting opportunities here to abuse the PS support framework to do nasty things. Because essentially, Microsoft is giving you a signed hooking engine that you can use to hook into other applications. But that's maybe something for the session later today that I'm doing with Geert. Okay? So I think as IT pros, we should forget about this. We're not going to do this. And I even think you should be very careful if somebody else shares his fix-up on GitHub. Are you going to just copy-paste it, compile it, and run it in your environment without understanding what it does? I don't think you should. Maybe if Tim published it, it should be fine. So maybe we can.
Very busy then.
Yeah, or we ask Tim to verify all the fix-up. That would look great on your sheet for MVP.
So we did a short demo for showing how Cloudhouse is complementing the PSF framework. And in this demo, we showed it at Ignite first because Andrew Klinik was presenting his session. We took his same demo where he showed fix of a write operation and a directory change. But I extended it to show how a VB6 type of dep violation can be handled with Cloudhouse support.
So dep violation, just to add, is a data execution prevention. So this means that when an application tries to execute code in a space that was not marked for code execution, you would normally get an access violation. Many applications developers say you should turn this off, but it's a great security feature. So we believe that you should not turn this off. If your application produces such a violation, it should be fixed. Right?
Yeah, but that's why the developer wants you to turn it off. Because then he doesn't have to fix it.
We are not turning it off.
It's like lift number 3 in this building. My room card doesn't work. It doesn't get me up. The fix is not turn off the security. The fix is fix the bloody elevator.
Exactly.
Yeah?
Exactly.
Okay.
Well, if you go around the corner and the other elevators don't have a key.
That's the workaround.
Okay, so we'll quickly take you through the recording of this because I'm told that maybe demos are not a good option here, so I don't want to.
Of course they are.
So I'll take you through the recording
Yeah,
of this.
everyone does live demos here.
Yeah.
You're not informed.
Okay, so this is an application where I've pressed this particular application and load module is loading a VB6 component, which is a very old component which is prohibited on Windows 10. It will throw a def exception. So when I start doing that, okay, sorry. No, sorry.
Maybe you put the video on manually.
Okay, anyway, so when I'll just go through this quickly.
It's loading now.
It's loading, but it's taking some time. So because this happened in real time, so I didn't modify the slide at all. It's what it took time to crash. So on my Windows 10 box, when I click on that button, it throws a def violation and the application crashes basically. So after some time, you'll see it crashing. I should have trimmed it.
But this is real life experience,
This is
right?
actually
Because if
the
it
demo.
crashes right away, you have a short login process monitor. If it takes minutes to crash, you have a log file this big, and where exactly did this crash happen?
Yeah,
So
1,000 rules.
exactly, exactly.
So now you see that it has crashed. So what we will do now is, instead of doing all the pain of going through your procmon, trying to identify what it is, then fixing it, we take you to a Windows 7 box where we can package the application. I know this application was made on Windows 7 and it did not throw a problem there. It did not have a problem there. So I'll package it. This is our packaging tool. It is taking a snapshot. So it has multiple features in it. One is the snapshotting technique, which we all know. Take the snapshot of your installation, files and registries, everything. Then again, another unique feature is, like Remko said, we package it on the machine where it runs today. We don't want you to run it on a machine where it doesn't run. How can you package that? So we have our packaging tool, which is supported from Windows XP, Windows Server 2003 till the latest platforms. It runs on all these machines and we capture the thing. And the next thing is we run the application there. We try to diagnose. Now when I'm clicking here, it is successful because this runs on Windows 7. But my tool behind the scene, it is grabbing information saying this is most likely to fail on Windows 10. So the tool has pre-built intelligence into it. It sees this button is definitely not going to work on Windows 10. Let me add a fix-up automatically. So the tool behind the scene, when you are creating it, capturing it, it does its work by just getting into there and checking what are the incompatibilities your application might face. And then the tool automatically packages it. This is where you see how the registry snapshot, file snapshot, and then you just say the package name, give it a name, and click package application. Now behind the scene, this is when the tool is actually putting all those rules inside, and then you're done. Your MSIX package has been generated. Now I'll take it to my Windows 7 Insider build because I want to run the MSIX package. So on this build, when I install that MSIX file, I'll install it, I'll launch it, and then the button works. Because the tool has grabbed information about the incompatibility and has fixed it automatically. Yeah, it's taking time. Probably when I was doing the demo, I was a bit slow, so I was doing it casually.
So Microsoft did a demo and they installed the complete Office 2016 MSIX in 4 seconds. Here we have a single exe which is under 100 kilobytes, and it's not as fast as the demo that Microsoft did on Ignite.
Yeah.
So either we are doing something very wrong, or they've edited the video.
Probably not. I think the first.
Oh yeah, okay. Disappointed us.
Rob, it was very nice that you
So
were in our
that's where
session.
it works now.
I'd
So
like
now
to
it's
see you
working on
again
Windows 10. Okay, anyway, so this thing works on Windows 10 now. So that was a quick demo of the MSIX offering. Now, what we did behind the scene, what it is it is a simple XML file. When you want to enable a particular feature, say you have a VB6 application which you know is failing, then the tool inside will do that. It will highlight that these two features we need, which is VB6 fixup, which might have 100 different APIs which are getting booked inside. It has COM fixups because it is spawning an out of COM server. So it's just a small XML file, no debugging, no programming, no hunting down your procmons, nothing to do with the application at all. That's where I said no debugging effort, no development effort. Just simple text file. Either tool will automatically do it. If not, if you know what is the problem, just enable it. It will start working.
So it may not have been visible on the excellent quality of the beamer, but when we ran the auto packager, we first captured the container, and then Priya actually launched the application, pressed the buttons in the application, and during this phase we are monitoring the application. So we are detecting what it's doing, which API calls it's making, and then we automatically apply these fix up in the container. So this means that we can then take the container, push it to Windows 10, and it will just work. Okay?
So if we go ahead now with the Azure story, because I see half of you are almost about to sleep now. So Windows MSIX is on the desktop side only. They have released it basically for desktop operating systems. How about your server operating systems? When there is a problem with the server apps, this is the way to go. So when we say Azure Migrate, it's your on-premise, and again, when you see many applications which are stuck on on-premise structures, it is basically because they have some kind of dependencies. They have some kind of, say, it might be something hard-coded in their application itself to talk to server number XYZ, or to talk to some port number which isn't available now. So you might have port-related problems, you might have other dependent services which are running, which is blocking you from going to the cloud. So if you see this kind of setup where you have all these things, and maybe it's end of life again, 2003, 2008, like Remko said, it's reaching end of life. So for all these problems, you can migrate to cloud by decoupling your application from that hard-coded instructions it had inside it. So if you see the next one, when you say on-premise hard-coded dependencies, to migrate to this thing, you might need to tweak with the networking stack, with the IP addresses, some server names somewhere, some developer has left it, maybe some port numbers dependent on that. So we do all these using the network redirection. We redirect most of the socket API calls, so that it's not stuck to your on-premise hard-coded system anymore. And not just that, we can even roam your data around, because we again redirect write calls as well, disk operations, everything is handled. That's where we can detach your application from that hard-coded binding it has on the premise today. So that's the way it's, again, code remains the same, code is not changed. Your server ratio, you might want to get rid of this and go to the basically 2019 now. Why do you want to go to 2016 anymore? And then even your footprint, VM's footprint, this gives a lot of advantage when you want to reduce your infrastructure cost or when you want to migrate to the latest platforms. And again, even with security, like Remko said, many applications, when we just take it from there, migrate it here, it might run, but it might open up a lot of security holes. So for those things, we have real strict isolation to see if this is an old behavior or this application is not doing what is expected. We isolate that particular object from the system. So least privilege execution, again, we don't need admin rights, like we said in our previous session, and malware free as well, because when you package an application using our technology, we ask you to switch on your antivirus. Many vendors say switch off your antivirus. We don't want that. Switch it on so that you are sure that nothing bad is getting captured in the snapshot. So that will make it malware free. And now a small demo of how many of you have seen 2005 SQL Server run on Windows 2016? No, it doesn't run because Oracle says it doesn't support it. Or sorry, Microsoft says it doesn't support it. So our PS guys have done a really excellent job on packaging it and making it run on Server 2016. So if you see, I'm first trying to install it on, I was optimistic. I thought it might work, who knows. So I tried to install it on Windows 2016. This is the basic installer.
I just want to reassure you, Chris, this is nothing to do with your eyes. This is the Beamer's Mac quality.
It's not good. Okay, anyway. You'll see that it does go to some extent. I expected it to crash immediately, but it did. On Windows 16, it went to, I think on Windows 7 or somewhere, or Windows 10, we have seen it crash immediately. But Windows 16, I thought they have fixed it because it went through a real good time. But at the end, it just logged a message saying we are not able to install, some kind of service is not getting registered. So.
And then the most annoying thing, it does a rollback. Because
Yeah.
you actually want to keep what you have and fix it.
Yeah. So again, this is a non-trimmed version, so I'll better forward it.
No, it's fine.
Oh, it's
Is it?
fine.
It's fine.
There we go.
Okay, yeah, that's there.
It's all green, it's all good.
Yeah, I was feeling that. I was actually feeling I chose the wrong app for the demo. I was doing it and I thought, this is working, what should I demo now? It did not. This is when I was happy, sorry. So yeah, if you see the log, I saw that it does say, well, installation failed and Express Edition installation failed. If you hunt through the logs, you'll see some kind of service which was not getting registered properly. So yeah, then we took our container package, which was 2016, and now this was already containerized. I didn't want to bore you for 4 hours by containerizing that. So this one, now you can see in the process hacker that this is running under our virtualization engine. If I show you that thing, this is our virtualization engine and it's running under that as a child process. And if you see the path, I mean, I'll highlight it. If you see the path, it was from the container location. Well, I have these slides I can share with you if you want to have a look. And now we are launching the latest Microsoft Studio Management Studio. So server is old, but the Management Studio is new, and it's a new platform. So I tried to log into that on my local machine, and there you go. If you see this version 9.0. whatever it is, that is the 2005 server version of 2005. So to make sure it's the right version, we can go into the properties. It's stuck or I was supposed to.
You can pretty much say anything because no one can read it, right?
Yeah, anyway, so I'll.
We trust you.
Thank you. Sorry, I'll forward it.
Just do like playback, do like it's a live demo.
Okay, I'm doing it right now. Okay, that shows the version of SQL Server, which was the old version. And just to see if the queries are running, I did execute one query.
So people will ask about performance then, because it's SQL, right? So any numbers, you see a difference on same hardware?
So it's challenging to get good numbers because we typically take the application from an old system to a new one. But the new system is typically more CPU cores,
Yeah.
more processing power. So I can tell you that our overhead is relatively low, minimal, because we don't use a filter driver, a service or an agent. There will be a little bit overhead in hooking API calls, but that's relatively cheap to do in terms of processing power. So you should probably see a performance improvement partially from you moving to faster hardware. So we are not making it slower, if that's the question.
No, exactly. But that will be a question if the customer asks, we need to do this for another 5 years. It will be faster. It's always good, right?
But it's kind of hard for us to quantify because the typical application that we do doesn't run on the new hardware without our solution.
Exactly.
So we can't like benchmark it with and without our solution because it only runs with our solution. We can benchmark it against the old system, but then you are sort of comparing apples with pears.
Yeah, because I think we had one instance.
Yeah, exactly.
If you go slowly, then you've got a problem.
It's
This
fast.
is it, right?
Yeah.
And I think this is key to any proof of concept that you do. You should ask your customer what are your success criteria. So, I mean, I think a criteria it should be faster is a bad criteria because you should look at what does your user need. So, for instance, opening this dialog should be under 3 seconds. Then it's a better criteria. I mean, everyone likes faster.
As long as no one notices, it's always going to be faster.
Yeah.
Yeah.
If it doesn't work, they tend to notice that.
No, agreed. Fair enough.
So we are done with the Azure migration thing. I'll just quickly show you a small demo of kernel object isolation because we spoke about it. It's Citrix Receiver, his favorite.
Yeah. So, surprisingly, this question I've been asked a lot in the past. So, apparently many customers try to run different versions of Citrix Receiver on the same machine. And typically they do this because they have an old farm with incompatible applications that they're trying to migrate away from. And then they're trying to migrate to a new version. Can you start the video, please?
Yeah, click on that. And I'll
It's automated.
It's working.
It's working, yeah.
She's cool. There we go.
There we go. I'm sure that in the impressive quality of the Beamer it will be a very good demo. But the idea being that we want to run 2 versions of Citrix Receiver on the same machine concurrently. So we are starting the exciting Notepad application.
This
You
was a
can
request
see-
from one of the banks actually. They
Yeah.
wanted this.
This says Citrix HDX Engine, so it's the newer version of Receiver. And now we're starting the version of Receiver that we all like because it actually worked pretty well, which was the online plugin. If If you have any complaints about receiver, please find Ingmar. But the idea being, which is what we want to highlight here, and with Priya this cool device pointing thing actually worked, with me it doesn't.
Yeah, you don't know how to use it.
It's not technical savvy at all.
Okay, that thing works.
Magic hands. Magic hands.
Okay, so it has 2 receivers, so I think we are over our time now.
Yes, so we can do
So,
questions.
And
Small question. In the past there were 16-bit applications. Can you package those 16-bit applications also to run on a
So
operating system?
good question. There is a limit to magic.
That's a bad idea.
The 16-bit applications depend on the 16-bit runtimes in Windows. So we can redirect APIs from A to B, but if there's nothing we can redirect it to, it's not going to work. So obviously 16-bit applications could run on a 32-bit version of, say, Windows 10. So definitely we could fix up some compatibility issues on that. Unfortunately, we cannot make 60-bit apps run on 64-bit Windows. Surprisingly, a lot of customers actually ask this, so there are still a good number of 16-bit applications around.
Crucial applications.
Yeah.
That's why they're still around.
I was even surprised that quite recently someone approached me and he had a DOS application which he wanted to run on 64-bit Windows, and actually you can, because there is something called DOSBox, which is a thing you can download from GitHub, and it emulates the old DOS APIs, so you can actually run things that existed before 16-bit, so 8-bit applications, you can run on 64-bit. You just can't run 16-bit apps. And if you look into Weijnen, which is the emulation layer for Windows apps on Linux, there was a lot of questions of asking if they can implement 16-bit Weijnen on 64-bit Linux even. But unfortunately, it's not possible.
Question. I reckon that some of the things you do are really hacking into applications, which also interfere with licensing terms from either customers or vendors. How do you deal with that?
So
it's the right person, I think.
obviously we don't want to violate license agreements, but sometimes imagine that you are using Citrix BVS and you have an application that is licensed on, say, the disk serial number, because it tries to take a unique fingerprint of the device it's running on. We can obviously help you with this, and to be fair, things like ThinApp can also do this. So I think even though we can technically prevent correct licensing of the application, it's the customer's responsibility to comply to their original license. So we are not a tool to violate license agreements, we are a tool to make it work on a new operating system on a different platform maybe. So we don't want to be purposely abused for licensing purposes, but if there is a technical limitation but you are still complying with your license, I think it should be fine. But
Do you tell the customer that you can fix it, but they will potentially break the licensing agreement?
I think this is a conversation you should have, yes.
You have it.
Well, if they're brand new anyways, it doesn't matter.
So on all these events you're captured or you're actually reacting to, are you actually logging them out so that we know that this is happening? So we can go in and go, okay, well, this was an acceptable call to things. This was not what we wanted to have intercepted, and we want to stop this.
Virtualization engine logs many more things. Whatever it does, it is logged, definitely logged. So we have worked for different government organizations as well, and they are very particular about what we are doing. They actually suspect that we are doing something bad, so they go through it in full detail, what exactly you are interfering in, what are you logging, and we have full logs. Our logs are not as good as API monitor logs, but definitely much more than Procmon and other tool logs. So if we are acting on something, if we are taking an action, we say we are doing it in the logs. If we are not taking it and it is something which people should change, we warn it. We say this is something happening and this will be reported as an error.
But our security people can pull
Yes,
Definitely.
and they do check it.
So by default, the logs are quite minimal. but you can like increase the logging level and quite very detailed logging. Obviously, if you log everything, there is a small performance overhead. This is why you can turn it on and off.
And then one last question before we get
Okay.
So we have McAfee step on things several times. So actually, you know, if we don't repackage your product, can we still actually utilize your function to, or you repackage using your product, and we use your function to actually intercept that call and say, okay, carry on. I mean, like Adobe, if you put McAfee on there and block certain things, it goes in and starts freaking out because it can't open up files certain ways, and it'll sit there and throw an error. And if you have Acrobat actually open again, you click on the same file, it works fine.
So the way we typically operate is there are so many Windows applications out there, there are so many unique different app component issues out there that even we meet issues that we've never seen before. So typically if we see a new issue, we write a custom Cloudhouse fix-up for one customer, and then we flag it internally, and once we see it in 2 or 3 different customers' application, then it's something that gets added into our engine so that we recognize it automatically. So we can always leverage the smart guys in our company like Oddy to help you create custom fix-ups for very particular issues. But we only put it in the engine if we think it's a problem that's not unique to one application or customer. Okay, because
Yeah, these are quite good questions, because obviously trampoline and stuff to get the API hooks in.
Sorry?
The AV's going first, or section. How do you get around those responsibilities?
So a particular issue that you see.
To get back into the Azure code and get back in again. If they're detouring stuff that's problematic, for some of the API tools first and stream how do you work out that you're in the right position in the list?
Yeah, because antiviruses are mostly acting at the driver level, right?
Yeah, a common issue is that an application is making many requests to read and write a file. So if the application is written optimally and it would write, I don't know, maybe 2 megs to a file, it would write 2 megs in one time. Some applications write like a byte at a time. So for 2 megs, it will do 2 million writes to a particular file. Those get all queued on the filter level driver for scanning, right? So every write makes a scan of the file. So if the virus scanner gets too busy, it will deny further access to the file because it has a queue to process, which is typically when an application says, I can't read or write the file. So what we can do for that kind of issues is do a retry, but that would be a custom fix-up. Oh, come on. So if you have any